When you're a kid, you can spend your money pretty much on anything you want. You can buy candy, gum, toys, gadgets to impress your friends. But, when you hit your late 20s, early 30s, it's pretty much a different story now that you're an adult. So why is it that in today's economy, people over 30 are still spending money like they're in grade school? Let's discuss where you should be at 30 years old. Recently, I did a talk about being in your 20s. And I said, the great thing about being in your 20s is that you know absolutely everything about life. But the bad thing about being in your 20s is that you think you know absolutely everything about life. Well, the 20s is your time to make all those mistakes. You're learning about money. You're sort of getting to know the work environment. Maybe you're just graduated from school and you're kind of getting into your work life. You're learning about saving and what to do and maybe how to spend. So you make a lot of mistakes in your 20s. And I actually think that that's okay. Of course, if you could not make all those mistakes, you'd be ahead of the crowd. But it's all right to make mistakes when you're in your 20s. But what happens when you reach 30 years old? Where should you be? And what do you do if you're not there yet? But I want to focus today on those two areas, right? So I ask myself kind of two questions, or sort of approach being 30 from two different angles. One, what should it look like right now? So you're 29, 30, 31, maybe in your early 30s, and what should your financial situation look like? And then we're going to kind of veer off the path a little bit and say, well, what to do if you're not there. So let's just dive right into it. At 30 years old, you have a lot of years behind you. I mean, you've lived 30 years and you've probably made a lot of mistakes. I'm sure you have. Maybe you've gotten involved in some money-making schemes. Maybe you've gotten a little windfall now and again and you've made some money, but you just went out and blew it frivolously. And actually that might be okay because it's a learning experience. It's a learning lesson. Sometimes making a little bit of money and then watching how quickly it can evaporate teaches us something. But by 30, I think it's a good base to have at least $10,000 in your bank account. I'm not saying you're a millionaire yet. I'm not saying you've got the best job for the rest of your life. I know that there's still going to be a lot of chess moves you have to make. But by 30 years old, you should have been in the workforce for at least 10 years. Most people are, many people even longer than that. And if you've saved $1,000 a year, I mean, we're talking about what, $83 a month over the course of that 20 to 30 years old time period, you would have $10,000. If you did any good chess moves, maybe with savings or birthday money or Christmas money, or maybe a little bonus you got at work or some overtime or a side hustle, $10,000 in 10 years should have been nothing. So I think as just a base, if you're 30 years old, your savings account should have at least $10,000 in it. And let me tell you, if you do, you probably feel a little bit different. You probably feel a little bit more confident, a little bit more self-assured. You're still concerned with money, but you're not so worried when you go food shopping or your car insurance payment comes up. So it really is a feeling that makes you feel good. Now, of course, I'd like to see you have a lot more than that, but at 30 years old, $10,000 is just something great to shoot for. It's really a good base, and that should be where you are. The second thing is, at 30 years old, you should have your debt clear. You should have made a lot of mistakes in your 20s. Maybe you got credit card in your 20s. Maybe you signed up for some subscriptions or bought some things or some plans or gym memberships you never used. I mean, those are the years to sort of you're figuring life out. By 30 years old, you want to have your debt cleared. You're thinking about your next 10 years, 30 to 40, and you do not want to go into that time period in your life carrying all kinds of debt, which is what most people do for the whole of their lives. So if you have any debt left and you've hit 30 years old, then you want to start to clear that up because you should have no debt when you're 30 years old. Now, some people will say, well, what about student debt? I mean, student loans are huge, and that kind of sucks just to get into from beginning. I went to school and I just paid my way through school and I paid as I went, and I don't have any debts. I worked hard. I had jobs all through school, and I went into it with a little bit of capital, and I just kind of paid my own way. So I didn't graduate with any debt. Point being, most people don't. and you may have a little student debt, but you know what? You can clear that up too. You have to chip away at it at a little bit harder now. And if you don't have any other debts and you've done the right things with your money, then you should be able to eat that up pretty damn quickly. The next thing when you're 30 years old is by now you want to have a well-defined budget. You absolutely want to know what you have coming in, what you have going out, and what you should be putting aside. I'm still a fan of paying yourself first. I think that should be included in your budget. We work hard, right? You've been hustling and strategizing and trying to figure out, what's going on in life. So now this is a good time for you to totally have a budget and have it worked out. So by now at 30, please have a well-defined budget. There's many different programs and budgeting apps and tools that you can use to budget, but create a budget that uses up every penny that comes in. Literally 100% base budgeting. 100% of your money should be accounted for, because if you don't give it a place to go, then it surely will go somewhere and disappear. The next thing is, I think at 30 you should have a paid for car. Stop taking out loans for cars, at least in the moment. Maybe you do want to upgrade. Maybe you do want a nicer car. But in your 20s, you were getting sold, right? You'd go into a place and people would always try and sell you. But now you're smarter than that. You are 30 years old. If you can't afford to buy a car outright for cash with money that you've saved up, or at the very least pay it off within a year, meaning put a healthy deposit, buy something you can afford within your price range that you've already predetermined. Do not get upsold, and make sure even if you do go buy a car that you're paying off, that you pay it off within 12 months. For a lot of people, they just go and they overbuy, and then they have a car that's depreciating in value, and it ends up being a huge loss. When they first buy it, they look at it like it is an asset, but it's not an asset. It's something that takes money every month, and you're also paying higher insurance premiums because you financed it. Your insurance will actually go down once you own the car outright. So I'm always a fan of having a paid off car, and by 30, you've made enough mistakes that cars should no longer be one of them. Buy what you can afford. Buy for cash if you can, and if you can't, make sure your payment plan is no longer than 12 months. You do not want to be in debt for the rest of your life in something like cars. The next thing at 30 years old is, by now you should have a plan, and I mean a real plan. Your days of kind of winging it are over. You did that in your teens, you did that in your 20s, you sort of flew by the seat of your pants. What's coming tomorrow? What's happening next week? Now you want a longer term plan. You're 30 years old or maybe older. Where do you see yourself in 5, 10, 15 years? What do you want to have? If you're thinking about ever not renting and becoming a homeowner, right, buying a house, now would be the time to start planning for that. Now would be the time to start budgeting for your down payment and saving a little bit of money. Not that you shouldn't be saving all along, you should, and you should have that built into your budget, but you may have something over and above that that you are putting away because you want to become a homeowner. Maybe you say in the next 5 years, I want to buy a house, or 6 years. So you start budgeting and planning for that. And of course, you're going to look at your income, you're going to see what you qualify for, but you're also going to work under that amount. Just because the bank tells you qualify for a $400,000 home doesn't mean you have to spend $400,000. You could go find a deal in the Midwest for $275 or $300, or maybe you know someone selling a home, or some retirees that are going to be going into assisted living and want out of their house. There's so many different situations in which you can become a homeowner. I've also used owner financing to get in at a low cost on many of my early properties. You also now in your plan want to start thinking about a proper emergency fund or a POM account, which I call the peace of mind account. That's the account so I can sleep at night. You also might start thinking about investments. Are you putting money away for your retirement? What does your retirement even look like? Do you have a retirement strategy or plan? I meet a lot of young people and talk to a lot of people in my office who say, oh, I want to, financial independence, retire early, right? The FIRE movement. And I'm like, how are you going to do that? And they have zero plan. They just think it sounds good. They think it looks good on paper to be retired and traveling all over the world and enjoying life. And I'm like, well, where is that money coming from? Most people have to work a lifetime to be able to retire, and you want to be able to do it in the next 10 to 15 years. Not always feasible, but Is it something to work towards retiring early? Absolutely. Maybe you don't want to retire at 65. Maybe you want to retire at 55 or 60. So at 30, you have to start thinking about that. What is your retirement strategy? What kind of funds are you going to put to work for you, number one, and two, where are you going to put them to work for you? So this would be the time to talk to a financial planner, a CPA, or a financial strategist, or even a life coach, and sit down and start to plan out your life. You want to have a plan at 30. You didn't have a plan when you were 19. Maybe you didn't have a plan when you were 28, but now you're over 30 and you should have a plan. What's that they say? Failing to plan is planning to fail, and we don't want to see that. So at 30, you have to have a plan. What if you haven't done all this, right? What if you don't have $10,000 in the bank right now? What if you do not have a plan for your financial future? What if you don't already have an IRA and a 401k set up through your work or working your dream job? What if you have a huge car debt, right? And you're going into your 30s carrying that? What do you do? Well, you have to make some drastic moves. I mean, now is not the time to screw around. Like I said, your days of winging it are over. You have to plan. Yes, you can still have a good time. Yes, you can still have some fun. But now you're going to actually have to put some actionable strategies into place. And I mean goal setting, right? You're going to have to set some real goals, and you're going to have to work towards an unshakable future, because you're going to be screwed at 40 if you're in the same situation you were at 30 with big car payments and loans and debt and credit cards and nothing paid off and still thinking about what you want to do for your dream job. So now is the time to plan. You've hit 30 or maybe older. What do you do? Number one, you're going to want to create a budget. You have a job. Maybe it's not your dream job. Maybe it's not where you want to be in 5 years, but that's just going to be part of your plan on how you're going to get there. But for now, you're going to use the money you do have coming in, and you are going to create a very strong, actionable budget in which becomes a habit, like a weekly habit. You're going to say, I'm going to take 15% for me. That's my fun money. It's all I can afford. I'm going to take 40% and use it towards paying my bills. I'm going to take the next 40% and I'm going to put that towards long term, and the balance towards my savings or my POM or my emergency fund. You have to break that down. What is a budget? It's 100% divided up into 2, 3, 4 categories at best that serve your life purpose, your life needs. So you're going to have to create a budget. If you've never had one before, it's not a big deal. A lot of people will say, well, budgeting's a hassle. I don't want to have to write down every time I purchase a Q-tip or a cup of coffee. The good news is Q-tips come in packs of like 1,000, so you don't have to, worry about that. But still, when you're purchasing things, you only have to keep track of it for maybe a week or 2 at best. See, the big expenses you already know. On day one, you're going to write them out. You're going to say, this is my rent. This is my car payment. This is how much my car insurance or health insurance comes to. I tend to spend $100 a week on food at the supermarket. You know those expenses. You can write those down right on day one. It's all the little expenses that kill you. You're eating out. You're getting coffee on the way to work, and you're telling yourself, oh, I only do that once or twice a week. But when you start writing it down, you realize, no, I do it just about every day, sometimes even twice a day. You're saying, yeah, I eat out 2 or 3 times a week. No, are you counting Uber Eats and DoorDash and food that's coming to your door and the pizza delivery you just got last night? When you write things down, you only have to do that for about a week or 2, and you can quickly figure something out. Do you know what you can figure out? Your habits. You figure out all the little holes and the places that are siphoning off your money while you sleep that you don't even realize it. Look at your credit card statement. Look at your bank statement. Off of that, you're going to be able to pull all your subscriptions, what most of your bills are that are coming out of your accounts, and anything regular that maybe you forgot about, like that gym membership or that coffee of the month club, whatever it is. But you're going to be able to do that and figure out exactly what's coming out. It won't really take more than 1 or 2 statements and maybe 2 weeks of logging things into a little black book to see where your money is going. Once you do that, you just create the budget, and then you actually can almost forget about it. If you know you make $1,000 a week and you can only take 15% for you, for fun money, just pocket money to do whatever you damn well please. Well, that's $150. You know it's $150. So you take that money out, you put it in your wallet, and you operate from cash, and that money is your spending money. Guess what? there's a benefit to that. If you don't spend it all in that week and you have $20 still left over, well, next week when you get your $150, you add it to that, and now you have $170 spending money, right? You can choose what to do with that money. And if you blow it all, when you blow it down to zero, that's it. You don't go to your debit card or your credit card or your charge account and start blowing money. That other money that is in the bank, that is for bills and for your long-term expenses and for savings, right? So you get those first two categories covered, and the rest will go into savings. And it's still your money. That savings money is for your future self to spend on the things that you absolutely need and maybe emergencies. So budget. This is the time. If you haven't created it, it's simple to do. It is certainly not a hassle, and you don't even have to think about the rest. It'll automate it itself because you've created good habits. Next, what are you to do now? You're going to have to start eliminating debt. If you do have debt and you've hit 30 and you're going into it with high credit cards, a car payment, maybe a rent that's too big or bigger than you can afford, well, now you're going to have to start eliminating. You know, what's the saying that most people overestimate what they can do in a day, but they underestimate what they can accomplish in a year? You may have to go 6 months, 9 months, maybe even a year of tightening everything up. But at the end of the year, your life's going to be a lot easier because you're going to eliminate debt through creation of great habits. 1 year of you tightening up your spending and tightening up all the funds that are going out and just going through your bills and saying, I really don't need this subscription. I really don't need to spend money on that. That's just extra. Maybe a night that I don't go out with friends and I'll push it off to next week or even next month. Saves you some money. But really what it's doing is it's getting you in a good habit. If you created good habits for even 1 year, 12 months, the next year and the next year and the next year are going to be so easy because you will have become a disciplined person who has great money habits. So you're going to have to start immediately hardcore slashing everything in your life that's siphoning off this money that you don't even know is missing until you look at your bank account, okay? Eliminating debt after 30 is so important, and just spending less. Now you're focused on that awesome future. You're focused on that powerful, powerful work exit that's going to hopefully come someday, but for a lot of people never does. They can't stop working. They have to keep working because they've created too many bills with their habits and their lifestyle. 30 is the time to eliminate debt and literally clean all that thinking up through better habits. The next thing you want to do is save 15%, period. I don't care what you make. If you make $500, you're going to have to figure out how to save 15% a week. If you make $5,000, you definitely should be saving 15% a week. The point is, normally I would recommend people a smaller amount. Like if you can at least save 5% out of every dollar that comes through your hands, that's great. What's that? It's $5 out of a $100 bill. You will not even miss it. 10% is really the standard, and that's what I like to see everybody do. Save 10%. But you can't do that anymore. You can't screw around. You're over 30. I mean, you've already probably wasted 10 years of struggling and losing money and giving up great opportunities and blowing money that's come through your hands like water. And now you can no longer afford 5%. You have to save at least 15% if you're going to start to see something noticeable build up so that you can put it to work for you for your future. That's the reality. That 15% just can't sit somewhere. You not only have to save it, but then you have to figure out where to put it. That's where a great financial planner or CPA will come in. The next thing you're going to have to do is learn the difference between assets and liabilities. Up until now, everything's been a liability. And even if it is an asset, like you go to work and you make money, well, then you turn it into liabilities by creating debt through vacations you can't afford, cars you can't afford, insurance payments that are too high, and literally spending the money like it's flowing through your hands like water. An asset is something that costs you money. I don't care what it is. You may think that watch you bought is just an asset, but it's depreciating and it doesn't make you any money. You might say, oh, but it's a Rolex. It's a great watch. It's pinnacle of watches. Well, that's great, but unless you bought it low and you sold it high, it's not an asset. Assets bring you money, and a good asset actually brings you money regularly. Your job might be an asset. Maybe you have a side hustle that's an asset. Those are assets. assets. But if you turn them into liabilities by buying something like a watch that's going down in value, or a car that you can't afford, or a vacation that you put on a credit card, those are all liabilities. Brand name clothing, liability. High-end vehicle, liability usually, unless you know how to buy and sell. The house you live in, definitely a liability if you're paying rent, but even a house you live in is a liability until the day you sell it, because you buy the house and you just pay. That's money going out every month. As a general rule, assets pay you, meaning bring money in all the time, regularly, and liabilities push money out regularly all the time. So anywhere where you're spending money and it's going out on a regular basis, I don't care what the item is you purchased, unless you can sell it for a profit, it is a liability. And it even is a liability until you sell it. Then you may realize a gain, but until you actually realize the gain, it's just money going out. So it's a liability. So you're over 30. You need to learn the difference between assets and liabilities and stop screwing around. Next, you want to have an emergency fund. If you haven't had one up until now, you know how terrible it feels when something happens and it hits you like a ton of bricks and you're like, my car broke down, or I had to pay an emergency room visit. Now I don't have enough for my rent, or my animal, my pet, my dog, my cat got sick and I have a huge vet bill that I'm now paying off. Or I racked up this money on a credit card going out with friends or traveling or doing a weekend of snowboarding or river rafting or camping or whatever you do, and now all of a sudden that bill comes due and you can barely afford the payments. Well, this is where a peace of mind account comes in, or otherwise what is known as an emergency fund. When you put money away, you're putting it away for your peace of mind. You know that things are going to happen. That's what's going on in life. Things are always happening. And most of the time, it's things that are unplanned that cost us what? Time and money. So you either have to go to work harder and longer to spend more time earning those dollars, or if you have an emergency fund, you can go to that account and safely, easily pay the bill and then replenish the money. Pay yourself back, but have the money somewhere. It's your money, and an emergency money is actually for spending at the end of the day. It looks like savings initially because that's why we're putting it away, and hopefully you don't need it. And if you do need it, hopefully you don't need all of it. Hopefully you don't need to drain that account. But doesn't it feel good to have that and go to sleep at night knowing that you have that cushion on whether it's a month or 3 months or 6 months worth of monies just sitting there as a cushion? It really does give you peace of mind. So think about starting. If you haven't yet, you have to put a little something towards that emergency fund. I don't care if you have to sell everything that's not nailed down. Sell things, put the money away. There's probably a lot of things that you have that you don't need right now. So you actually could just boost it and get it started by eliminating some old tech and some old gadgets and some old things that you're just not using anymore. Long term, you also want to start thinking now, if you haven't, you're over 30, about your retirement. We talked about that initially, and that's what should be happening if you have your shite together and you're over 30. But if you haven't looked into it yet, you want to start a Roth IRA or some kind of IRA. And if you haven't looked into it, but your employer offers a 401k, then you absolutely want to get involved in that. That's a little bit of the money that's going to come off the top out of your pay, and that's going to go into a 401k, which is part of your retirement. And some of them offer a matching plan, which is awesome. So they put some money in and you put some money in. You should be taking advantage of that. I myself have always been self-employed, so I've never had an employer say, hey, if you put in $5,000 a year, we'll match that and give you $5,000 a year. That's like earning unbelievable interest on your money, like 100%. Why wouldn't everyone take advantage of that? And there's different rates and different percentages through different employer packages. But the point is, if they're offering a good 401k with a matching package, 100% you're a fool if you're not taking advantage of that. You've only got a certain amount of time on this planet. That is the reality. And I want you to live the best possible life you can. So have a plan, look forward 3, 5, even 10 years from where you are right now and say, where do I want to be? Create a simple budget that you can follow and literally start writing down your goals and put them in place. And soon enough, you will hit all of your targets. My name is Daniel F. Margasa. You are watching the Almost Criminal Millionaire channel. And if you enjoy learning about the topics of money, finances, and how to improve the health and wealth of your bank account, then please like and subscribe for more.